The queen dropped the royal crown at the king's feet and declared before the stunned court that she would not return to his throne unless the duke stood beside her as her chosen protector, and the entire kingdom demanded answers. For 5 years, Queen Alara had lived beyond the borders of her own realm, carrying the pain of exile and the memory of a betrayal she never fully understood. The king, once her beloved husband, had allowed whispers and accusations to separate them. He had chosen silence when she needed defense, and that silence had wounded her deeper than any enemy sword. Now she had returned, not as a broken woman seeking mercy, but as a queen who had discovered her own strength. Yet the most surprising figure beside her was Duke Adrian, the man the court once considered her greatest political rival. The nobles watched as Adrian stepped forward, not with a victorious smile, but with a quiet expression of concern. He bowed before Alara and said, "Your Majesty, I only did what any honorable person should have done." The queen looked at him with gratitude she could barely hide. During her exile, when others abandoned her, Adrian had offered protection without demanding loyalty in return. He had brought supplies to the village where she lived, defended her name when rumors spread, and reminded her that she was more than a crown. But the king saw only betrayal. "You would replace your husband with a duke?" the king asked, his voice echoing through the hall. The queen's eyes moved from the king to Adrian. The choice before her was not about power. It was about the difference between someone who owned her title and someone who valued her heart. Years earlier, she had married the king believing love would grow from duty. She had stood beside him through difficult seasons, defended his decisions, and sacrificed her own happiness for the kingdom. Yet when danger came, she discovered that a crown could shine brightly while leaving its wearer completely alone. Adrian had shown her something different. He listened when she spoke. He noticed the fears she tried to hide. He treated servants with the same respect he gave nobles. Slowly, the woman who had lost faith in kindness began to believe again. Still, the queen carried a secret that could change everything. Before her exile ended, she had discovered a hidden letter proving that the betrayal against her had not happened by accident. Someone inside the royal court had planned her downfall, and the person responsible was closer to the throne than anyone imagined. As the hall grew silent, Adrian looked at Alara and realized she was afraid. Not of losing the crown. Not of facing the king. But of revealing the truth that could destroy the kingdom she had sworn to protect. The queen reached into her gown and removed the old letter. "Before anyone judges my choice," she said, "the truth must finally be heard." The king's face changed when he saw the seal. It was the mark of his own royal house. And behind Adrian's calm expression was a painful realization. The queen had returned not only to choose between two men, but to expose a betrayal that had been hidden for years. The court held its breath as Alara broke the seal and prepared to read the words that could shatter every alliance around them. Adrian stepped closer, knowing that whatever followed would decide whether the kingdom found peace or fell into chaos. The queen's voice trembled as she whispered the first name written inside it. The name written inside the letter was not the one anyone expected. "Lord Valmorn," Queen Alara whispered. A wave of shock moved through the court. Lord Valmorn had been the king's most trusted advisor for nearly 2 decades. He had arranged royal meetings, advised on wars, and stood beside the throne during every important decision. To many, he represented loyalty itself. But Alara remembered the night her world collapsed. She remembered the guards arriving at her chamber after midnight. She remembered the accusations placed before her. She remembered the king refusing to meet her eyes as the council demanded her removal. And most painful of all, she remembered waiting for him to defend her. He never did. "Is this your proof?" the king asked coldly. "A forgotten letter from a man who cannot answer for himself." The queen held the paper firmly. "This letter was written before my exile. It describes the plan to turn the court against me. It describes the lies that would make you doubt me." The king stepped forward, but Duke Adrian moved between them, not threatening, not aggressive, but protective. For the first time in years, the queen saw something she had once hoped to see from her husband. Someone standing beside her. The king noticed it too. "You defend her now," he said to Adrian. "But where were you when she was still my queen?" The duke lowered his eyes for a moment. That question carried more weight than anyone expected. Because Adrian had not always been there. Years earlier, he had been a distant noble who avoided royal conflicts. He had watched the court whisper about Alara but stayed silent, believing palace matters were not his responsibility. It was only after her exile that he discovered the truth and realized his silence had allowed injustice to grow. "I was wrong," Adrian admitted. The court became quiet. A duke admitting failure was almost unheard of. "I thought staying away from conflict made me wise," he continued. But I learned that silence can become another form of betrayal. The queen looked at him with surprise. She had expected him to defend his honor, not reveal his regret. That was what made Adrian different. He did not pretend to be perfect. He simply chose to become better. Later that evening, as the court prepared for the investigation, Elara stood alone in the royal gardens. The weight of returning home finally reached her. She had faced the king, the nobles, and the rumors, but now she wondered what would happen when the truth was fully revealed. Your Majesty. She turned and saw Adrian standing nearby. You should not be here, she said softly. Perhaps, he replied. But you should not have had to stand alone again. The words touched a place in her heart she had tried to protect. For years, she had convinced herself that needing someone was a weakness. Exile had taught her independence, but Adrian had shown her that strength did not mean carrying every burden alone. You risked everything by defending me, she said. Adrian looked toward the palace lights. A person's worth should not depend on whether defending them is convenient. For a moment, neither spoke. There was no grand declaration. No dramatic promise. Only two people who had both known loneliness recognizing something familiar in each other. But their quiet moment was interrupted when a messenger rushed into the garden carrying urgent news. The council has discovered something, he said, breathing heavily. The letter was not the only evidence. The queen turned. What else did they find? The messenger hesitated. Records showing that someone attempted to stop Duke Adrian from helping you during your exile. Adrian's expression changed. Because he suddenly understood. Someone had not only tried to destroy the queen. They had tried to prevent the one person who could save her from ever reaching her side. And the person who gave that order was someone inside the royal family. The revelation struck the palace like a thunderclap. Someone inside the royal family had tried to stop Duke Adrian from reaching Queen Elara during her exile. The queen looked toward Adrian, searching his face for answers. For the first time since his arrival, she saw something she had never seen before. Fear. Not fear for himself. Fear of what the truth would reveal. Who gave the order? Elara asked. The messenger lowered his head. The record carries the royal seal. But the signature was removed. A murmur spread among the nobles. The mystery had deepened. The queen had returned expecting to uncover the person who destroyed her reputation. She had not expected to discover that someone had also worked to separate her from the one person who had shown her compassion. Adrian stepped away from the group. I should have known, he said quietly. Elara watched him carefully. Known what? That my involvement was never accidental. The Duke revealed a secret he had kept since the beginning. During Elara's exile, he had received a message from an unknown person begging him to stay away. The warning claimed that if he helped the queen, his family would lose everything. His lands would be taken. His name would be destroyed. At the time, Adrian had ignored the threat. But he had not told Elara. Why did you hide this from me? She asked. His silence answered before his words did. Because I was afraid you would think I helped you because I wanted something in return. The queen looked at him, surprised. You believed that I would think so little of you? Adrian looked down. I knew what the court would say. They already believed a duke helping an exiled queen must have a hidden reason. Elara stepped closer. And what was your reason? For a moment, Adrian said nothing. The entire palace seemed to disappear around them. Because someone had to remind you that you were not what they called you, he finally said. They called you a traitor. A failure. A woman who lost everything. But I saw someone who was still trying to protect people even after the world abandoned her. The queen felt her heart tighten. She had spent years wondering if anyone truly saw her. Now she realized someone had. But before she could answer, the palace doors opened. The king entered. His expression was different from before. The anger had faded, replaced by something far more complicated. Regret. I heard everything, he said. Elara turned away slightly. The man standing before her was not only a king. He was the person who had once promised to stand beside her. I made mistakes, the king admitted. The court froze. A ruler confessing fault was something they rarely witnessed. I believed power meant never showing doubt, he continued. I thought protecting the throne mattered more than protecting the person beside me. His eyes moved toward Elara. And I lost you because of it. The queen remained silent. Part of her remembered the kindness he once showed her. The early days when they laughed together and believed they could change the kingdom. But another part remembered standing alone when she needed him most. The king took a breath. I want the chance to prove I can become the man you believed I was. The words were sincere. And that made the choice even harder. Because now Elara was no longer choosing between a heartless king and a perfect duke. She was choosing between a past filled with broken promises and a future built on uncertain hope. That night, she walked through the palace halls alone, carrying the weight of a kingdom's future. Behind one door waited the king, asking for forgiveness. Behind another waited Adrian, the duke who had never asked to be chosen. But when Elara reached her chambers, she discovered something that changed everything. On her table was a small wooden box. Inside was not a threat. Not a political message. But a collection of letters. Letters Adrian had written during her exile. Letters he had never sent. And the first line of the first letter made her hands tremble. I do not know if you will ever return, but I need you to know that someone believed in you when you could no longer believe in yourself. Queen Elara sat beside the candlelight, holding the letters with trembling hands. She had faced armies, accusations, and exile without allowing herself to break. Yet these simple pages threatened to undo the walls she had built around her heart. Each letter revealed a side of Adrian she had never seen. He wrote about the day he learned she had been forced away. He wrote about the anger he felt toward the injustice, but also about the respect he had for her strength. He wrote about small moments he remembered from before her exile, the way she listened to servants, the way she defended villagers during council meetings, the way she carried kindness into rooms where others carried pride. He never wrote that he loved her. Not once. And somehow, that made the words feel even more powerful. Adrian had not been trying to win her affection. He had simply wanted her to know that she mattered. The next morning, Elara found him in the old library, reviewing documents about Lord Valmont's betrayal. You wrote these letters, she said. Adrian turned. For a moment, the confident duke disappeared. He looked almost like a man caught revealing a secret he had guarded for years. I did. Why did you never send them? He looked toward the window. Because you had already lost your home, your position, and your peace. I did not want to add another burden. I did not want you to wonder if my kindness came with expectations. The queen studied him carefully. You cared for me without asking anything in return. Adrian gave a small smile. Is that so difficult to believe? For many people, it was. The court had taught Elara that every favor had a hidden price. Every promise carried a condition. Every act of loyalty came with a request waiting behind it. But Adrian had shown her something different. Before she could respond, a messenger entered the library with urgent news. Your Majesty, Lord Valmont has been found. The queen immediately stood. Where? In the northern province. But there is something else. The messenger hesitated. He claims he did not act alone. The room fell silent. The queen looked at Adrian. The duke's expression hardened. Who does he accuse? The messenger swallowed. The former royal council. The discovery created panic throughout the kingdom. Lord Valmont had not been acting as a lone traitor. Several nobles had secretly joined him, believing Queen Elara was too compassionate to rule and that the kingdom needed a stronger, more ruthless leader. But there was one final piece of information. A document had been discovered among Valmont's belongings. A document proving that the king himself had once been warned about the plan against Elara. The queen felt the air leave her lungs. She had hoped the king was simply a victim of manipulation. But now she had to face a painful question. Had he truly been deceived? Or had he chosen not to look closely because the truth was inconvenient? When Elara confronted the king, he did not deny it. I received the warning, he admitted. Her heart sank. You knew? I suspected something was wrong, he said. But I convinced myself that the council knew better. I thought if I questioned them, I would appear weak. The queen stared at him. You sacrificed me to protect your image. The king lowered his head. Yes. The honesty hurt more than another excuse would have. For years, she had wanted an explanation. Now she had one. And somehow, it was both the answer she needed and the one she feared. That evening, the kingdom gathered outside the palace as the queen prepared to announce her decision. Would she forgive the king? Would she leave the throne behind? Or would she choose the duke who had stood beside her when she had nothing left? But before she could speak, Adrian approached her privately. His words shocked her. Your Majesty, if you choose the throne, I will support you. Elara looked at him. And if I choose you? The duke's eyes softened. Then I will spend my life proving you did not choose wrongly. But before she could answer, a final message arrived from the northern province. Lord Valmont had revealed one last secret. A secret about Queen Ilara's exile that even she did not know. A secret that could change the future of the entire kingdom. The final message arrived just before sunrise. Queen Ilara stood in the grand hall as the messenger approached with a sealed document. The entire court waited in silence, sensing that whatever truth was hidden inside would determine the fate of the kingdom. She broke the seal. As her eyes moved across the page, her expression changed. Not anger. Not fear. Pain. What does it say? Duke Adrian asked quietly. The queen looked up. Lord Valmorn did not create the rumors against me because he wanted power alone. She paused. He wanted the king to believe I was unworthy of the throne because he knew something about my bloodline. The court gasped. The king stepped forward. What are you saying? Ilara held the document tightly. Before my exile, Valmorn discovered that my family had been protecting a secret for generations. A secret that could challenge the traditions of this kingdom. The room became uneasy. For centuries, the royal family had believed strength came from control. They believed rulers were chosen because of their ability to command. But the hidden truth was different. The ancient records revealed that the first rulers of the kingdom were not chosen because they were the strongest. They were chosen because they served. Compassion had once been the foundation of the crown. And over time, that truth had been forgotten. Valmorn feared Ilara because she represented the old way of leadership, the idea that a ruler's greatest power was the ability to care for those who depended on them. He tried to remove me, Ilara said, because he knew the people would follow a queen who valued them over her own pride. The king looked away. For the first time, he understood that the battle had never truly been about a crown. It had been about what the crown represented. A choice stood before him. Hold on to the power he had always known. Or become the man the kingdom needed. Days later, the royal council was rebuilt. Those who had betrayed the kingdom were removed, and new advisors were chosen, not only from noble families but from people who understood the struggles of ordinary citizens. And throughout it all, one question remained. What would Queen Ilara choose? The kingdom waited. Many expected her to abandon the throne and marry Duke Adrian. Others believed she would return to the king and restore their marriage. But when Ilara finally appeared before the people, she surprised everyone. I will not choose a man because the world expects me to, she announced. The crowd listened. I will choose the person who has shown me truth, loyalty, and respect. Her eyes moved toward Adrian. Then toward the king. The king was once the man I loved. He was my greatest hope and my deepest disappointment. But forgiveness does not mean forgetting. The king lowered his head. Then Ilara turned to Adrian. The duke did not save me because he wanted a queen beside him. He saved me because he believed I was worth saving even when I had nothing to offer. A silence filled the square. Then Adrian stepped forward. Not as a conqueror. Not as a man claiming a reward. But as someone receiving a gift he never demanded. The queen placed her hand in his. The kingdom erupted with celebration. Years later, people would tell stories about the queen who returned from exile and changed a kingdom. But the most remembered story was not about the crown. It was about a woman who discovered that true love was not the person who promised the world when she was powerful. It was the person who stood beside her when she had lost everything. And beneath the golden lights of the palace, Queen Ilara and Duke Adrian began a new chapter, not as a perfect couple without struggles, but as two people who understood that love was built through patience, loyalty, forgiveness, and the courage to choose each other every day.